Oh hey gents, this is Noah from Noah's Archetypes, and today we'll be looking at the new Infernity Support cards that are coming out of Phantom Rage. Starting with Infernity Wildcat. This is a dark level 3 Fiend Tuner effect monster with 1400 attack and 0 defense. You can special summon this card from your hand by sending one other Infernity monster from your hand to the graveyard. You can only special summon Infernity Wildcat once per turn this way. If you have no cards in your hand, you can banish one Infernity monster from your graveyard. Increase or reduce this card's level by 1 until the end of this turn. Now, the reason why this is such a good card for the archetype is the mere fact that it allows you to empty your hand quicker and it doesn't eat on your normal summon. So I think that's a great effect, considering that most of the Infinity cards have effects that activate if you have no cards in your hand, and there aren't really that many cards, Infinity monsters specifically, that help you do this. Infinity Knight can do a similar thing, but only if it's destroyed, and you must have 2 cards to discard in order to activate its effect. Whereas Infinity Inferno allows you to discard up to 2 cards, but it has to be set a turn before you can activate it, which means that some of the effects of the Infinity monsters will not be able to activate the turn that you set Infinity Inferno if you do have too many cards in your hand. Infinity Patriarch has a similar effect, but it special summons itself if you have no other cards in your hand. So I do think that Infinity Wildcat is actually a good addition to the Infinity archetype. Next up, we have Infernity Conjurer, a dark level 3 Fiend effect monster with 1200 attack and 900 defense. If you have no cards in your hand, all monsters your opponent controls loses 800 attack. If this card is in your graveyard and you have no cards in your hand, you can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use this effect of Infinity Conjurer once per turn. Okay, so there's a pattern here. All the Infinity cards now seem to have a once per turn effect, and that's okay. The biggest problem with this card is that it has an effect to let your opponent's monsters lose 800 attack if you have no cards in your hand. This card isn't that strong. It's probably not going to stay on the field that long, so I think this effect is misplaced. It would actually have been better on one of the synchro monsters, or if this card gave a synchro monster this as an additional effect, maybe as if it was used as synchro fodder, and then the synchro monster gained this as an extra effect, then it would have been a decent effect. But on this monster specifically, not that great. The other effect to special summon itself from the graveyard is a very good effect, seeing as it gets banished. This is to make sure that you don't abuse this effect, but either way, this is a decent effect, but the first effect is very misplaced. And then we have Infinity Paranoia, which is a spell card, and it says tribute 1 dark monster, special summon 1 Infinity monster from your deck or graveyard with the same level but a different name, but negate its effects. During your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 Infinity monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. You can only activate 1 Infinity Paranoia per turn. Now, pertaining to its first effect, you could tribute some other monsters like Dark Grepher, which can special summon itself by discarding a level 5 dark monster from your hand, and the Infinities do have at least 2 level 6 dark monsters. Also, you could discard another dark monster and send 1 dark monster from your deck to the graveyard. So Dark Grepher does really help to set up the graveyard and empty your hand, and you could tribute this card to try and get out a level 4 Infinity monster, but it doesn't work with Summoner Monk, as Summoner Monk while face up cannot be tributed at all. So unfortunately it doesn't work in all scenarios. You could tribute a Infinity monster you control to maybe bring out something like Infinity Conjurer. The effect will be negated, but you could get it back from the graveyard once it's sent there. I think the reason why the effect is negated is because a lot of the older cards do not have once per turn effects. So if you already summon that monster this turn, you could still use the effect again. That is why I think it's negated. And the second effect allows you to maybe get a card like Infinity Wildcat back to your hand in order to get it back onto the field by emptying your hand. You don't have to go for Infinity Wildcat, of course. There are other monsters you can go for. It depends on the situation you're in. But either way, the fact that it activates from the graveyard makes it a very good effect. Next up we have Infernity Hell Archfiend, a dark level 6 fiend synchro effect monster with 2200 attack and 1600 defense. Of course, I don't think it's going to keep the name of Infernity Hell Archfiend, seeing as the TCG does not like using Hell in any of their cards. It has generic requirements. Once per turn, you can target one face-up card on the field, negate its effects until the end of this turn. Then, if you have no cards in your hand, you can destroy that card. If this card battles an opponent's monster while you have no cards in your hand, any battle damage it inflicts to your opponent is doubled. A dark synchro monster that uses this card as a material can make up to 2 attacks on monsters during each battle phase. Now, the thing that I like about all these Infernity cards is that they're going into a very interesting direction that I approve of. I really like it. And that is that if you do not have an empty hand, they still have effects that are usable. It's just that if you do have an empty hand, you will get a bonus for that. In this case, you can negate a monster effect, but if you have no cards in your hand, you get to destroy it as well. Also, if you have no cards in your hand, the damage is doubled, and the third effect has nothing to do with your empty hand at all. And that means that if you use this card as synchro fodder, you can of course use a new dark synchro monster that can attack twice, and depending on what monster you bring out, you could have a good thing going there. For example, you could go for a monster that has also similar effects where you have no cards in your hand and it has effects for that. Or you could go for a Hot Red Dragon Archfiend, which destroys all face-up monsters on the field except itself, if it's in attack position of course, and it will be the only monster that can attack that turn, but being able to attack twice means you get 6000 damage easily. Of course, if you can increase its attack to 4000, then you can go for game in one turn, or if you can inflict the rest of the damage, then you could win that turn. If you go for something like Borrelode Savage Dragon, if you already have a Link monster in the graveyard, you could boost its attack and allow it to attack twice, which would make it a mini Borrelode Dragon in that regard. Also, it would have a negation on field, so that's an extra bonus as well. Next up, we have the trap card, Infernity Suppression. If you have no cards in your hand, you can activate this card the turn it was set. When your opponent activates a monster effect while you control an Infinity monster, negate the effect, then you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's level times 100. You can only activate one Infinity Suppression per turn. Okay, in this case again, we have another situation where if you have no cards in your hand, you get a bonus. Obviously, you get to activate it that same turn, but if you do have cards in your hand, then you'd have to wait until next turn. So I think that's not bad. In certain situations, since it is a Omni Negate, you could basically negate any monster from anywhere. So if your opponent tries to use a hand trap on you, you could negate that and inflict damage. The damage is irrelevant really, unless it's a high level monster like Nibiru. But of course, the difference is Ash Blossom actually gets discarded, Nibiru stays in the hand if I'm not mistaken, and you would then your opponent would then take 1100 damage in that situation. That might make your opponent think twice before activating other monster effects from the hand. But this is a very good card, and you should really consider using them, especially since all of these cards have bonus effects if you have no cards in your hand, but are still usable if you do. But anyway, that is my take on these cards. Tell me what you think of them down below, and I'll check you guys later.